And good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff_2020. And here at McDuff_2020, we underscore the fact that our channel, the one that I built over nearly 2 years, has just been terminated with no excuse, no reason, no chance of appeal, just plain terminated. And of course, that's part of the purge going on right now. I kept hoping I might make it through the election, but as I predicted this morning to Jumping Mouse, I said, they're going to terminate me soon. And it wasn't even maybe 3 hours later that I did the show, 11 a.m. show, and then there was a comment that I wanted to respond to, and that YouTube wouldn't let me respond. And I said, "Oh, why not?" And I went over to the homepage, and it's had that notice on it. Let's see. All right, pardon me for the mouse sound here. We're getting set up a little different tonight, but here we are. We're live, and we have 13 people watching. Wonderful. Oh yeah, we stand tall, and the show must go on. Well, yeah, I do have a backup. It's a terrific loss because you can't just go and get those videos and suddenly put them back up on a new channel. It's a one at a time thing, and it takes a long time for them to load. So it's probably not going to be practical. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with the books that I have, and I'm going to go back and summarize them and put them together. No, it's not jail, Tyrone. It's I'm out. I'm kicked off the playing field. Thank you, Edward Lobio. Glad to hear from you in Europe. This is a great book, guys. It's Douglas Valentine, The Strength of the Wolf. And why am I reading it? Because it tells us about this incredibly important but little known agency called, hey, Kathy, you still got your wrench, yeah. It's a little known agency called the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. And this story is just amazing because you've heard of Harry Anslinger, right? And this is just my little introduction into when I start reading. But you guys have heard of Harry Anslinger because he's the guy that produced all those anti-marijuana, short films and propaganda. And as we learn from the book, the problem that these guys have is justifying their jobs. And they're narcs, they're narcotics agents. And so they're supposed to do busts. But there's a big problem with that, as developed in the first few chapters, and that is simple. The intelligence agencies are in bed with the dope dealers. And this started before World War II. Doug Valentine starts with an example in 1928. And this is about a scheme to install a dictator in a Latin American country. And in order to get him some arms, they let him sell the dope through New Orleans. And he sells the dope, and the money goes to buy the arms, and then he has the arms and then the CIA support, and he takes over the country. Well, he couldn't have done that without the arms, and he couldn't have got the arms without the dope, and the CIA couldn't have taken over the country if he didn't have the arms and sell the dope to American kids and get them addicted. So this beginnings of this was before the CIA. It was before the OSS. It was independent operations going on behind the backs of the American people. And it's all related to the historic opium trade. That, I mean, if you're making that kind of money, somebody passing a law saying you can't do it anymore is not necessarily going to stop you, especially if you have already got a network of people that can strong arm and bribe and blackmail and force their way in anyway. So how could we possibly expect, as long as this narcotic is illegal, how can we expect people not to smuggle? It's crazy. It's such a great way to make money, and if you can get the cops on your side, that's what happens. So what happened was, in order to achieve our foreign policy goals, we let that be more important than protecting our citizens from the narcotics. And while Harry Anslinger was very vocal about talking about how horrible the plague of narcotics is, he was using his agents to bust marijuana and very low-level narcotics users, and talking really big about, the dangers of narcotics, while turning a blind eye to the fact that the intelligence agencies were running operations in association with the mafia in order to achieve their goals, whether it's taking over a country in Latin America or just making a whole lot of money for some other coup they have in mind. So this is another angle of the past that we have to put on the table. We have to put it on the whiteboard in order to understand what's going on now. Because sadly, with Anslinger being a pawn of the elites who are running these dope deals of huge size, there's nobody there actually stopping them. And Anslinger and the media that we have are blaming not the nationalist Chinese who are supplying the dope, not the Chiang Kai-shek opium army, that took over Taiwan with violently suppressing the local people so that they could have a place to keep going with their opium-based economy, such as it was. Well, the American people never knew that, because American policy was to support Chiang Kai-shek no matter what, and that's what they did. So the FBN becomes a tool of the OSS, and during the war, the OSS instructed the FBN to come up with the truth drugs. And they did. They tried them out. The first one was a very, very intense THC derivative that they got people really, really, stoned, and tried to interrogate them under those conditions. And I don't know, they might have had some success, but generally it didn't do anything. Well, along comes LSD, and the FBN still has the duty of testing the drugs. But they don't test them in a trial with volunteers and, lab coats and strict, lab protocols. No. And they don't even have volunteers, because they are testing it on unsuspecting Americans. Unsuspecting people are getting their drinks dosed with LSD. And this fellow named George White is an FBN agent who has been doing this, fulfilling the FBN's duty to the OSS and later the Office of Policy Coordination in the State Department, as that was a bridge to the CIA, which was formed in 47. But the George White dosing campaign went on. And that led to all kinds of tragedies, of course, including the death of Frank Olson, which was talked about in the last chapter. Well, that's kind of my idea of a summary right now, but I will tell you, I'm going to try to upload all of the copies of Strength of the Wolf readings that I've done already onto this new channel. Okay, so I'm going to try to reproduce the archive of Strength of the Wolf, and that will take me some time because I think there's 8 or so chapters already. But then I'll have it all here on this channel, and maybe I can go back and grab some of the other books. I'm just looking at it as a huge amount of file transfers and digital tedium that I really don't want to have to do. So I plan to keep working with the same books for a while to emphasize the important points. I want to do kind of a book review format of all the books on the book train. So now that we've read them all and thought about them thoroughly, I think I can go back and try to pick the highlights and put together a little book report on each one of them that we can share here on this channel, and really just as an introduction to people reading the books on their own. As I continue moving forward with Minefields and moving forward with interviews, as I get set up on a new channel, which is called Brand New Tube. As soon as I get that done, I'll be producing live shows over there too. No, Mark can't help. Corky, it's just a matter of YouTube just saying no. I mean, you can't convince them to change their mind. So we've been through an awful lot already about the FBN's connections with the Purple Gang in Detroit, with the CIA, with the Green Gang and the Tongs from Nationalist China and San Francisco, with Mexico and the Dr. Margaret Chung, who was the doctor for the Flying Tigers, and also traveled around delivering parcels throughout the country, and went down to Mexico, where the importation was run from Nationalist China for some time. Well, let's keep going forward. I'm going to go back and pick up a little bit from the last time. So we're talking about George White, this incredibly violent and misogynistic bully that has become the agent of the FBN, the narcotics, out there to try to test the truth drug, and they're thinking that LSD may do it. Here's what they do. They set up a brownstone, of course. George White returned to New York in 1953 and resumed his LSD duties. The Eisenhower administration had given the program a shot in the arm with the appointment of Alan W. Dulles as CIA director. And nobody is more of a nemesis to my father than Alan W. Dulles. So Richard Helms as chief of their clandestine services, and both were willing to use any weapon to fight communism. Of course, fighting communism was just a way of saying we're taking over everything that is not already ours. So then we get to the Frank Olson case. Integrity issues, I'm on page 139. Integrity issues continued to plague the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and a few months later, the New York Police Department revealed to Anslinger that through a wiretap, it had overheard an agent discussing cases with a drug trafficker nicknamed Tony Iodine, real name Didone. The police couldn't prove that the agent had taken a bribe, but the agent had been involved in a case against major drug trafficker Saul Gelb, and the case against Gelb evaporated as a result, as did $10,000 Jim Ryan had given the agent to buy half a kilo of heroin from Gelb. In 1954, $10,000 was the New York office's budget for an entire month. Minimizing the impact and implications of the above incident, Anslinger in 1961 referred to it as the type of shock that comes occasionally in our kind of job. He told of an agent who had been a spy for the underworld and had killed several drug traffickers for his mafia employers. Anslinger claims that this agent/assassin committed suicide outside his office. An FBN assassin for hire, an agent caught selling out cases, agents addicted to heroin, and one dead from an overdose. Allegations of agents handing out seized narcotics from the drug disposal vault at headquarters. All of this was business as usual for Anslinger, and he simply applied the FBN's integrity problems the same policy of, quote, defensive avoidance that he adopted when dealing with drug smuggling allies like Batista and the nationalist Chinese. Anslinger looked the other way, for acknowledging the extent of corruption within the FBN would have brought the organization to its knees and perhaps would have revealed that George White was dosing unwitting people with LSD on behalf of the CIA. Anslinger looked the other way, and as a result, the problems just got worse. Such was the web of deceit Anslinger had woven around the FBN when in January 1954, Governor Dewey asked the chief of the New York State Commission of Investigations, William B. Hurlins, to investigate the oft-repeated rumor that Dewey had commuted Lucky Luciano's prison sentence in exchange for a bribe. Because it was out of his hands and because several FBN agents had played a role in spreading the rumor, this investigation was one of the greatest threats Anslinger had ever faced. Pardon me. This is the Q brand ginger beer. It's very gingery, very peppery. I like it. Oh, I have to tell you something. You know, when I was showing you different kinds of ginger beer that I liked, and for a long time I was drinking Reed's ginger beer, in the green bottles, you know, with the yellow labels. Well, I've been drinking this a little more expensive stuff, you know. It's, about maybe 15, 16 cents an ounce at this point. Well, I went back to Reed's the other day. I bought 2 cases, two 4-packs of it. And I drank the first bottle of it, and I thought, that doesn't taste right. And so I thought about it, and I said, what does that taste like? It didn't taste like ginger. And then I went and I looked at the bottle, and the ingredients are so small, I had to get my magnifying glasses out and read it. And guess what the first ingredient is in their ginger beer? It's not, well, it's sugar, cane sugar, but the very first ingredient other than the sugar is not ginger. It's pineapple. Pineapple. No wonder it tastes funny. So I'm expecting a ginger taste, and they give me this. So I'm telling you, Reed's is off my list. I'm not going. It's not right. They should call it pineapple beer or pineapple ginger beer or something, so to warn people, because it doesn't taste like ginger beer. Okay, that's my rant. Cheers. It made me sneeze. Oh. All right. Great. Well, let's keep it light. We shall be fine. Yeah, the pineapple doesn't taste right in my ginger beer. Sorry. I think I'm going to take them back, to the store and say, hey, this is mislabeled. This is not ginger beer. This is pineapple sugar drink. Yeah, they just wave some ginger over the vat. That's right, Marcia. Yeah. The way we used to make extra dry martinis when I used to tend bar years ago. Just wave a little vermouth over the top. Lucky Luciano and other mafiosi did help the government's intelligence services during the Second World War. This fact was uncovered during the Herlands investigation, and yet while the details were not released to the public for 20 years, Anslinger, Garland Williams, George White, and Charlie Siragusa knew the truth at the time. Their problem began in 1947 when Walter Winchell suggested that Luciano might be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his wartime services. Aware that they could not sustain their crowd-pleasing anti-Luciano propaganda campaign if the bête noire was portrayed as a hero, they scrambled to preserve the government's dirty little secret. Garland Williams obtained denials from William Donovan and Charles Haffenden and repeated their denials in a 22nd February 1947 article in the New York Times. As a way of further concealing the truth, Anslinger fueled rumors that Dewey had taken a bribe in exchange for commuting Luciano's sentence. His loudest mouthpiece in this regard was Michael Stern. In several articles he wrote for True, the Man's Magazine, Stern asserted that Luciano's commutation, quote, had cost him $75,000 in favor of the Republican electoral campaign, and that experts in his field estimated that he had to spend $200,000. Stern even suggested that Dewey, having freed Luciano, was personally to blame for America's drug problem. Based on Stern's allegations, Senator Kefauver raised the issue in 1951, and a Democratic state senator charged that Luciano had bribed Dewey with $300,000. Dewey endured the smears until 1954, when he directed Hurlins to bury the rumors once and for all. The records of the commission remained secret for 20 years, but it is now known that Luciano and the Mafia served the government, and that George White and Charlie Siragusa gave perjured testimony about it during the Kefauver hearings. When called before the Hurlins Commission, Siragusa grudgingly admitted editing parts of Stern's article. He denied, however, editing the parts that had to do with the bribe. This was a lie, too. Siragusa, in a 1952 letter to Anslinger, indicated that Stern had based his false allegations on a memo written by Mafia Squad leader Joe Amato. Sent by Amato to Jim Ryan on 16th of August 1951, the memo said that $500,000 had been paid to the, quote, right people for Luciano's parole in exchange for Mafia help in the 1948 presidential election. The memo referred to Stern's article in True magazine. Siragusa's testimony, along with that of Navy intelligence officers, led Hurlins and other powerful establishment insiders to speculate that the CIA and military intelligence through the FBN were still employing drug lords like Luciano. Were the Hoods, or even FBN agents, serving as CIA assassins? A Pandora's box was about to be opened, and that's when Anslinger asked his masters to intervene. On 7th of July 1954, the CIA sent Hurlins a telex indicating that his investigation jeopardized national security. He was forced to back off, and George White continued his extra-legal MKUltra activities apace. As a postscript to this shameful episode in FBN history, it should be noted that the Hurlins Commission investigation, Senator Joe McCarthy crowned his disreputable career by claiming there were subversives within the U.S. Army and the CIA. McCarthy directed his assault on CIA officer Cord Meyer. As chief of the CIA's International Operations Division, Meyer was responsible for infiltrating domestic and foreign labor unions and preventing them from being controlled by communists. His search for the so-called compatible left was steeped in underworld intrigues and dovetailed with operations conducted by CIA counterintelligence chief James Angleton and his assets in the FBN, Charlie Siragusa, and George White. In other words, McCarthy, through his investigation of Meyer, was getting close to the CIA's international drug smuggling conspiracy. The Senate launched an investigation of McCarthy shortly after he began to attack the espionage establishment, and for reasons that were never made public, he was censored and stripped of power by his colleagues in December 1954. The reason may have been connected to narcotics. In 1962, Anslinger confessed in his book, The Murderers, that he had nursed an important congressman through a drug addiction. Perhaps that congressman was McCarthy. If so, did Anslinger's CIA masters encourage him to engage in this illicit activity? What better way to compromise a political hack? Anslinger kept McCarthy high, while the CIA fed him an enemies list. And when he became a liability, they pulled the plug. If true, it was the perfect MKUltra operation. Well, that's what we were just talking about with regard to Hunter Biden. George and I, the last time we talked, was the usefulness of addiction in getting somebody to do what you want and even, commit treason. Yes. Hi, Jennifer. Yeah, Sidney Gottlieb was mentioned, I think, last night when I was reading. The beastly nature of the business. MKUltra operations were coordinated with political operations that impacted the CIA's protected drug routes. Oh boy. Well, that just tells me, that more likely that, the attack on my father and my family may have well involved George White and these people that we're talking about right here. I mean, what happened to us probably was later in the 50s and in the 60s, of course, but it sounds like these people would do it. And well, enough for now on that. So the idea here is that they're doing these operations in order to protect their drug routes. As noted, one such operation was reportedly conducted by George White on behalf of Rudolph Halley. In 1953, as the Fusion Party's candidate for mayor, Halley was working with two of the CIA's primary International Operations Division assets. Fusion Party co-chairman David Dubinsky of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, and the AFL's Irving Brown. Seafarers Union President Paul Hall was certainly involved, too, in working to discredit left-leaning waterfront and maritime unions and union officials by tying them to drug traffickers. George White dropping LSD in the drinking water of one of Halley's opponents was another surefire way of discrediting someone. FBN agents also helped to provide security for the CIA's drug smuggling operation by keeping certain longshoremen under surveillance because they were, quote, working with smugglers. These longshoremen were invariably with the left-leaning National Maritime Union, or the mafia-tainted International Longshoremen's Association. Topping the list of the drug-dealing longshoremen was Rosario Saro Mogavero, former vice president of ILA Local 856, a post he left in 1953 after being charged with extortion. Mogavero's son was married to Rocco Pellegrino's daughter, and Pellegrino controlled all the rackets in Westchester County, New York. Pellegrino supplied heroin to Joe Civello in Dallas through Mogavero, his contact man with John Ormento, manager of the Mafia's drug distribution syndicate. The ILA, notably, was in competition with the CIA-connected International Brotherhood of Longshoremen. The situation was fraught with political intrigues, and White addressed the problem with his old friend Price Spivey, who had quit the FBN and gone to work for the Seafarers Union as a security specialist after gangsters planted heroin in the car of the Seafarers president, Paul Hall. Excuse me. On the 2nd of October 1954, White met with another old friend from the FBN, John Hanley, then with the Secret Service, to discuss what he called in his diary the, quote, CIA Avenue. This was a reference to the CIA's protected drug route from the Far East through Cuba to the Mafia in New York. 2 days after White and Hanley met, Cerro Mogavero went to trial for harboring drug lord John Ormento, a fugitive in the Happy Meltzer case, which Price Spivey had managed in 1952. A made member of the Genovese family, Mogavero pled guilty and received a short prison sentence. This enabled Ormento to walk away, or more precisely, to be driven home to Manhattan by George White. According to White, they went out for drinks. Ormento promised to be a good boy from then on, and White, defying logic, believed him. There are several disturbing aspects to this sequence of events. In September 1954, an informant for Agent Ben Fitzgerald arranged to buy kilogram amounts of heroin from Chicago mobster Jacob Klein, and Klein agreed to introduce the informant to Mogavero. But someone tipped Klein off, and at the very last minute he refused to meet with undercover agent Angelo Zorlo. The case, as a result, fell apart, and in October, Klein continued to deal narcotics in Chicago with apparent immunity. In January 1958, Agent Jack Lowe spotted Klein with Saro Mogavero at the Sheridan Bar in Chicago, but Love was transferred to Los Angeles, and the Klein case was passed to another agent. In 1960, the Klein investigation collapsed once and for all when the new agent's informant was murdered. What is especially disturbing is that the failure to make the New York case on Klein enabled Mogavero to take the fall for Ormento, and for Ormento to open the heroin gateway from Cuba, evidently with George White's tacit approval, unless White actually believed Ormento's pledge to give up drug smuggling, which he did not do. Instead, Ormento formed an alliance with Joe Bonanno's drug manager Carmine Galante, and they began moving massive amounts of narcotics from Cuba and Montreal to New York, Chicago, and Dallas. It's an unbelievable coincidence that White met with Ormento at the exact moment the New York agents had a chance to kill the biggest mafia drug smuggling operation, parentheses, the CIA Avenue, in its cradle. It's as if White, on behalf of the CIA, and Ormento, on behalf of the mafia, were conspiring together. There is one more unsettling aspect to this story. In early 1955, through a police wiretap, agents Greg Poulos and Louis Pagani learned where and when a drug delivery was to be made. They waited patiently, and when John Ormento and his bagman Sal Loproto pulled up to make the drop, the agents descended and searched the car. In a trap under the front right seat, they found not drugs, but $5,000 in cash and a silenced .22 automatic, the type of gun typically used in CIA assassinations. Having arrested John Ormento and having stopped a murder in progress, Poulos and Pagani vaulted into the big leagues. Then things got weird. Within weeks, both agents were transferred, and the Ormento case was given to more deserving agents in New York. Loproto, like Mogavero before him, took a fall for John Ormento, and agent Gregory Poulos, who had come to hate, quote, the beastly nature of the business, quit the FBN in disgust. What was most bestial about this line of work was articulated in a bizarre letter White wrote to his MKUltra partner, Sid Gottlieb. In it, White said, quote, I was a very minor missionary, actually a heretic, but I toiled wholeheartedly in the vineyards because it was fun, fun, fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest? Unquote. Where else indeed? Granted, George White was an aberration, and it's important to remember that only a few FBN agents worked with him in illegal CIA operations. But White was the CIA's secret policeman and was always protected. And in the wake of the Hurlins quiz, as Dr. Gottlieb sarcastically referred to it, arrangements were made to close the Bedford Street pad. On the 6th of December 1954, Gottlieb visited White and Pierre Lafitte one last time in New York. He arrived with a fountain pen air gun and an instruction manual on the use of drugs and prostitutes in sexual seduction blackmail schemes as part of the new MKUltra leather project to be conducted by White in San Francisco, where he had been safely ensconced as the FBN's new district supervisor. Wow. Well, that's the end of Chapter 9 of Doug Valentine's book, Strength of the Wolf. We're learning a lot that we really wish we didn't have to know. But thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for being here tonight. I see we have 42 people here, and that's great. It's wonderful to have the support, and thank you for following me over here to my backup channel. And once again, check with Screaming Ospreys for the latest in terms of what we're going to be able to do to resume our live streams with perhaps a brand new YouTube or brand new tube it's called. If not, we will persevere, and we'll let you know at screamingospreys.com. By the way, if you haven't joined my Patreon, please consider joining it. You can even do it for $1, and if we had enough people with $1, that would take care of the expenses. If you can't afford it, don't do it. But if you possibly can, it would be great. So thanks a lot. Good night.